Happy March, everybody. It's Eric live alongside Rod with our Indiana postgame show sponsored by Fanduel Sportsbook, your go-to source for betting on the sports you love to watch, whether it's a parlay or you just want to stick to the money line. You'll find all the odds you need on the Fanduel app. Easy to download. You can get started right away. Head on over to our Fanduel Player of the Game at slido.com. That's SLIDO.com. Hashtag TFF INOTS. You still have time to vote before the end of the show. Also, drop us a line from where you're listening to. We really appreciate it. If you're also live on a support page, you can go to find us at the support page at tffinots.com/support to get the necessary links to support the show. Whether you're a Patreon or Substack, as a monthly supporter, you do get access to ad-free audio version of the show and some sneak peeks sometimes. You can also drop a super chat in if you'd like. Well, Rod, like just about every game we talk about, things never quite transpire the way you expect. I suppose that's why sports are so intriguing. We sort of expected Michigan State to dominate the boards. It didn't really happen, especially the first half. We expected Indiana hit the most threes. Well, that certainly didn't happen. Michigan State found a sort of different way to win this game, and maybe a little bit like the UCLA game, the three-point shot shooting sort of covered up a few warts, but Michigan State, especially Kohler, got off to a really hot start offensively, where he went 4 for 6 from the field in the first half, along with 2 for 4 from three. He was 4 for 4 from the line. And then also Kur Teng really got going in the first half, hit 4 or 5 from three. And Michigan State led 45-37 at the break. But, that's kind of a little bit where, at least personally, I was a little concerned because despite hitting from everywhere on the floor, Indiana just made enough hay on the boards and were able to get just enough to kind of stay in contact with the Spartans. And so they weren't really put away by Michigan State. Again, they're at home. You wouldn't expect that, and I'm sure you'll touch on this too, but Indiana looked like a team that was planning on playing a game that lasted about 34 minutes. And I think it was Alexis. They kept panning the camera to him. He looked like one of those guys at CrossFit who was about ready to puke every time they showed him late in the second half. He had truly nothing left in the tank. The second half did play out a little bit more like the first for the Spartans. They were still hot from three. Teng had another 2 of his 3 attempts from outside the arc. Fears added 11. And getting them over the line relatively easily against Indiana, a game that I think got down to maybe 5 or 6, maybe as close as it got in the second half, but they weren't sweating it too much. And so this puts Indiana as a team that's really definitely on the outside looking in for an NCAA tournament berth. I think now Michigan State probably safely at 3 right now. And assuming they take care of business at Rutgers, the 3 seed should be, according to all the bracket sort of things we talked about and looked at, should be safely at a 3. Michigan State, of course, at 14-4 in the Big Ten, 24-5 overall. Heads home for senior day on Thursday against Rutgers. Indiana drops to 8-10 in the conference play, now losing 4 in a row. Michigan State also with this win and the loss by Purdue at Columbus. It's pretty much, I have to check, but I can't imagine there's a scenario where they don't get it automatic, the triple bye. So they should have their first game of the Big Ten tournament Friday, which allows them a lot of time to rest, which would be nice too.
I think on that one, I think mathematically they're not out of the woods yet because it's possible that Wisconsin could tie them for the 4th spot, and I believe Wisconsin would get it based on the head-to-head. I think that's how it works. Whereas MSU has the tiebreaker over Purdue.
Right, right.
If Purdue were able to. So the magic number is 1, basically. 1 Wisconsin loss or Michigan State win, I believe, wraps up a top 4 finish. But honestly, right now they're tied for 2nd.
Right, yeah.
With Nebraska. So there's no reason to screw around. Just go beat Rutgers, and then, then we'll see. Then we'll see what happens. The more I think about it, the more I think it's kind of important to finish either as the 2 or the 3. And not the 4, because the 4 sets you up for a Saturday game against Michigan, and I don't want that.
Yeah, we just don't need that.
Not because I don't think Michigan State can win, but because I don't want Michigan State. I want Michigan State to be able to play their games in the Big Ten tournament free of any sense that it's a must.
Right.
Because that's going to allow you to rest fears a little more, all the things that we would like to see them do, right? Hard to do that if you're playing Michigan. So let's really hope that, and I haven't gone through all the permutations. I think they're fine with Illinois as long as they beat Rutgers, because then the best Illinois could do would be to tie them, and MSU has the tiebreaker there, right?
Correct.
So I'm trying to think. I guess I guess it's still possible. I'd have to go through all the permutations, and I don't care enough about the sack race to really care.
Yeah.
But I would, being one of the top 4, getting the triple bye, and now at this point, the more I think about it, the more avoiding a Saturday game against Michigan would be good. That would be more or less ideal given where Michigan State is sitting, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I think the only thing I'd say is, before talking about tournament seating, go ahead.
Which is this game. I thought Michigan State opened it tremendously. They did exactly what I thought they would do, what they should do, which is go inside and pound them. You know, Indiana adjusted to that in part by playing a fair amount of zone.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to take some of that away. Some of it was, frankly, that Michigan State was hitting threes. They were, it's easy to say, well, you get seduced into taking those shots, right? But they were hitting them at such a good clip that you really couldn't argue with it.
And they were the shot that Indiana was giving them, right? I mean, it's like in some respects, you have to take that shot. Absolutely. I mean, it's wide open. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And so it didn't end up being stylistically exactly the kind of game that I thought. I'm going to differ with you on the rebounding, though, because I do think in the first half, it was not going according to Hoyles, as they
say the last 8 minutes of the second half, it changed.
But Michigan State ended up with a pretty substantial edge.
Yes, they did. They did.
Very dominant on paper. And frankly, very dominant in the game if you watched it as the second half unfolded. So that was the way they rebounded in the second half and the way they defended. I gotta find the number here because it was tremendously impressive. And I think I retweeted it. So I'm going to look for it real quickly here. Maybe not. It's not. It's not here. But Michigan State over the last 7 minutes. Oh, I know where I can get to it. Michigan State's defense. They mentioned on the broadcast they had a stat up that Michigan State went like almost 5 minutes without scoring before finally Fears hit that mid-range jumper and then hit some free throws.
Yeah.
To change the narrative. But you know what they didn't talk about on the broadcast? They didn't talk about what was happening at the other end. And what was happening at the other end was pretty damn similar to what happened in the game in East Lansing down the stretch. Here's what it is. I got it now. Indiana scored 4 points in the final 7 minutes and 55 seconds. 4 in the last 8 minutes. So that's what, 1 point every 2 minutes of play?
Yeah.
My math right? Yeah. That's why it didn't matter that MSU was struggling offensively. It didn't matter because they got stop after stop after stop after stop. And that was getting stops against a team that if they can do one thing, we know they can shoot it. And we're actually, up until that point, seem to be shooting it very well. Now, their final numbers look pretty good for the Michigan State cause defensively. But that was in part because of the way they closed that game.
Yeah, the last 8 misses or something like that from 3.
Michigan State just locked them down.
Yeah.
And you saw during large portions of that game, I mean, that was the Tucker DeVries I think Indiana figured they were getting.
No kidding. That's the first time I've seen him play. I haven't watched a lot of Indiana basketball. That's the first time I've seen the Tucker that I remember from Drake.
His final numbers were actually less impactful than I thought because he was only 6 for 16 from the floor, 3 for 12 from 3. Boy, it seemed like it was better than that.
He missed a lot early, and he missed a lot at the end, even more at the end, I think.
But he definitely had stretches where he was, and he was 5 for 5 at the line. Wilkerson, again, 11 for 21 overall, only 5 for 14 from 3, which I found very surprising because watching the game, it seemed like he was killing them.
Yeah.
But then you look at the numbers, yeah, they held him down there. But that kid, I said it in the preview, I'll stick to it after that game. He is one of the best pure offensive wings, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country. He's an incredibly tough cover. I felt very badly in the second half for Jordan Scott, because I'm not saying Jordan's defense was perfect, because you could always do a better job at, say, fighting a guy and preventing him from getting to the spots he wants to get to, some positional stuff, earning every inch on the court, that kind of thing you could critique him for. But by and large, I thought Jordan was at least reasonable defensively against Wilkerson. He was contesting shots reasonably well. He wasn't getting blown by. He wasn't failing to get to him. And during a fairly long stretch of that second half, it didn't matter, because Wilkerson was just taking him. That's what a great senior player does.
Yeah.
And he did it. It was very impressive. But in the end, again, none of it mattered. So I do think, while the 3-point shooting element of it for Michigan State is not something you count on, I still do think that enough of that physicality advantage I spent so much time talking about showed up, particularly at the end of the
but
game.
8 minutes left. Yeah, that's about what you said.
Not just statistically, with the rebounding totals or whatever, but the bit that you mentioned, which is absolutely true and critically important. The last 8 minutes of that game, Indiana was gassed. And part of that is down to the physicality advantage that Michigan State has. They take so much out of you, not just running, but just physically competing against them possession to possession, that, it's hard. It's hard. And especially when you don't play a lot of people, on top of the fact that you're not particularly physical and the opponent is,
right.
And it showed up. It definitely showed up.
Yeah, well, let's go through some individual performances for Michigan State, and a good reminder again, of course, that if you are out on the line right now, live with us, head on over to that's the wrong one. Head over to slider.com and hashtag TIFNOTS and pick your player of the game. I'm kind of curious what people think. So we'll begin, of course, with Jaxon Kohler.
2 horse race.
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean,
3. Actually, you can make a case for 3. But
I think with 3. I think there are 3 you can make a case for. So Kohler with 21 points, 7 or 12 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, 4 for 4 from the field, 13 rebounds, 6 of them offensive, a couple of assists, a turnover, a block, played 32 minutes. And I thought defensively was pretty good. I mean, Indiana certainly got some work done down low a little bit until Alexis just kind of totally ran out of gas, and there's just nothing left.
That was it. There was a stretch in the first half where Alexis was really working Jaxon. It surprised me, because Alexis is not a guy I would expect to be able to do that.
Well, and Michigan State wasn't digging down on him and really trying to stop initially when he got a few things going, like Cooper. I mean, that was the only thing you could say with Indiana is they got Cooper in some foul trouble that left Kohler out there a lot more, and sort of, he had a lot of tough matchups, I think, to just be covering everybody sort of down low.
Yeah, but look, put that aside. This was, and we're going to return to this when we hit the keys. And I think
we must be something. You're a savant or something.
I think we need to have something. Well,
I think we're going to have 12 keys. Everyone wants to got their name on the keys next.
It doesn't take a genius to say that Michigan State needs Jaxon Kohler producing at a high level to be at their best, right? It just doesn't. Now, you could say, well, he hasn't been doing it consistently lately, so calling it on the right night, okay, I guess I got that right, but he was great. I mean, the way he started the game, just Indiana had every time they got a mismatch inside, they found him and he converted. He hit some jumpers. That was good to see. And then in the second half, especially, I thought I haven't seen a half by half, splits on the rebounding, but it seemed to me that his rebounding ticked up in the second half, particularly on the offensive end. He was a big part of that, because Michigan State in the first half didn't get a lot done on the offensive boards, but in the second they did, and he ended the game with 6 offensive rebounds. So a lot of
he had 4 and 9. So 4 in the first half with 1 offensive, and the rest was all in the the 9 and the 4 offensive rebounds in the second half. So you're right there.
Yeah. So very happy. I mean, he was efficient, 7 for 12 overall, 3 for 5 from 3, 4 for 4 at the line. Just a great game and exactly what they needed out of him. And I think that's got to be great for his confidence. See the ball going through the hoop with regularity like that again, to have a big rebounding night again. Yeah. And so now he's got to keep it at this level the rest of the way.
Right. Yeah. The two things about that I liked a lot is that they went inside, got him going inside before he sort of like the first shot is a 3, a spot 3. So he got a couple of those easy ones. And the thing that about that too is real impressive that, and one thing you talk about all the time, you don't usually have teams exploit those mismatches as much, but he got Enright switched onto him. I don't know if it was both buckets, but it's certainly at least the second one. And then they just kept punishing Indiana every time they made that switch. And Enright, who's tiny.
This game had a lot of examples of that. There's one I happened to catch on Twitter while I was waiting to start, of a play that actually Indiana had, where their big kid comes off the bench, Bailey, he was baseline block extended on the left side, and he had Jeremy Fears guarding him. Now, just in case you don't know who I'm talking about, Reed Bailey's 6'10".
Yeah.
And he had Jeremy Fears on him. And there you could see people sitting on the sideline in the crowd motioning for him to take it at him. What does he do? Swings it back out to the perimeter. I did think Michigan State wasn't perfect. I saw a few where they didn't hit the mismatch, but they also had won the reverse mismatch where Fears actually had Bailey guarding him, and he got called for the push-off, which technically
it was
good call.
Yeah.
The problem is you see that play 20 times a night, and it's not called consistently at all. That's my only problem with it. But Michigan State missed a few, but especially early, they got to them and they punished them. And so that's what you want to see. So that was good, and Jax was a big part of that early.
Then Jeremy Fears, 21 points. He got, I think, 12 in the second half, so kind of split his scoring. 7 for 13 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, 5 for 6 from the line, 4 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 turnovers, a steal. Probably could have had a couple more assists. I mean, Cohen Carr that one. I mean, I know that the lob was not perfect to Carr, but it was pretty close.
I think he had 3. I think he had two with Cohen and 1 with Coop.
Yeah.
That should have gone down and didn't.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, real good game for him. I mean, he ended up playing a little, probably more than I think Michigan State wanted. I think they tried to keep him out, but played 37 minutes. But he still, at the end, he looked like he had a lot more in the tank than Indiana did. And, I mean, sure, he was tired, but he was just less tired, right? I think that was pretty much the case.
Yeah, another really, really good game from Jeremy Fears. What's new? I thought once again, I know I said the Purdue game, I just felt like he was so not just under control, but in control.
Yes.
Of that game. And the same thing was largely true in this one. He controlled this game. And you'll notice when MSU late in the game was struggling offensively, who was the guy who stepped up and got him points? Jeremy Fears.
Yeah.
That like mid-range shot he hit was the big one because
that just ended it.
It had been 8 for several possessions in a row, and Indiana had failed to score 2, but you just felt like, boy, if they get one more, they get this down to 5 or 6, you might have a finish here. You might have a ball game. And him hitting that shot just really, I felt, put it on ice, and then he hit 3 or 4 free throws late, I think, to really put it away. But that's what he does, right? He's their guy. He's a closer. He's going to go out, and when they need it, he's going to make plays. I just I thought he played another great game. And you look at the rest of the Big Ten, and honestly, I mean, as we're recording this, of course, the day's games are over. So many of our listeners probably realize Purdue lost again, this time at Ohio State.
Badly. Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt now that the best point guard in the Big Ten this year is Jeremy Fears. I really don't. I think we are beyond. I'm not sure if the media or even the coaches in this league fully accept that, but they should because it happens to be the truth.
they'll catch up for next year. That's how it always goes, right? I mean,
Yeah,
unless
but
you're
it should be it should be right now, because when you factor in defense, there's just no question. But I would also say, don't look now, but the supposed weakness Jeremy Fears has, jump shooting, he's been pretty good from three the last few games.
yeah.
2 for 5 today, and the shot looks good, looks confident. It's not flat the way it had been at different points. And he's a winner. I mean,
Yeah,
flat
his
out.
mid range looks good. I mean, he's finishing at
Flat
the
out,
rim as
he's a
well.
winner.
Yeah,
And,
right.
And I don't think there's anybody, certainly in this league, that's playing better at that position than he is.
No, hands down, there's no question about that. And I would say too, very much like Winston, I'd say late junior year and certainly senior year, you just felt like that. Just feel like he's always in control of the pace. He's in control of like the entire, like you just feel calm with him running things. And that is how Jeremy is right now. I mean, he just, he's very much the pace is whatever he wants it to be. If he's running, you're running. I mean, it never seems like the wrong decision, I guess, is what I'm, as far as like what they're getting into action.
When a mistake comes, at least for me, it's surprising.
Yeah.
It's gotten to that point, which is exactly where I was in terms of comfort level with Cassius his last 2 years. It's like when a turnover would happen, or he takes a bad shot, a forced shot, you're shocked because it just you get so comfortable with the quality of decision. That doesn't mean they all go the right way, but the decision is the right one, And he's look. I've been beating the drum on Jeremy Fears from the moment they signed him. I mean, again, I'm not claiming genius status. I think it should have been pretty obvious that he was going to be not just a very good player, but a really good Michigan State player. That he fit the program, he fit Tom Izzo, and the way he played last year, given the circumstances especially, I was very enthused by. But I'll be honest, I didn't think he was going to take quite this leap this year. I thought he was going to be very good and a key to a very good team, but I didn't see this. This is the sixth time he's eclipsed 20 points in a game this year. I'm not sure I quite expected that to happen.
So, and then, I mean, it's super impressive. Jordan Scott kind of struggled in some ways today, just sort of defensively. He got foul trouble and stuff. Yeah.
Fouls.
Hit his 1 3-point, 1 of 2 for 3, had a 1 rebound and assist.
But it was a huge rebound.
Just like the last game.
It was a defensive rebound, but it led to a bucket at the other end. It was a plastic man rebound. It was a long rebound, which was contested, but Jordan's arm just kept going, and the other guys didn't. And he corralled it and got the rebound, and Michigan State ended up scoring. Yeah, foul trouble, and it hurt. It hurt Michigan State in that first half. If Jordan Scott, even with the way he struggled at times with Wilkerson, which again, I'm not sure anybody in a Michigan State uniform would have done much better during those stretches, the way Wilkerson was playing. He's just an extremely tough cover. But if they had Jordan Scott in the first half, I think we would have seen a halftime lead significantly larger than 8, because you saw the problem. And this is just one negative aspect to mention on a day with a lot of positives, so don't take it too far. But that first half, you really saw, at least in my opinion, we did, how fragile Michigan State's thing is right now.
Oh, yeah.
On the perimeter. Because they had to go with Trey Fort for the most minutes he's played in forever. And it was because of foul trouble to Jordan Scott. Izzo had to keep Teng and Carr, and especially minutes where it was Teng and Fort out there together. Boy, you saw it. You said, or I hope you did, how vulnerable they are. And that was entirely because Jordan Scott was in foul trouble. And he got there so early that Michigan State had to really, it would be one thing if he picked up the second foul with 5 minutes to play in the half.
Yeah, right. It was a
big deal. He picked it up so early that they had to go long stretches with that. And that allowed Indiana to stay around, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think it has a domino effect too, where it just kind of goes, where then you have problems in the interior. And then, of course, and then I think also the fact that Cooper had the 2 fouls early, I think both of them were both under 4. And that was, and that hurt the rebounding tremendously. And
Absolutely.
I think that was why they got so much going offensively.
I did think that Cam Ward did some good things, but
he did.
The fact that Michigan State had to go small more often than we've seen really all year, I think that had something to do with allowing Indiana to hang around in the rebounding battle. And in the second half, when they weren't in that position, it's maybe not an accident that's when Michigan State flexed and got control in that area.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but
overall, look, I think these are learning experiences, right? For a player like Jordan Scott. And for as hyped as we are, and it's the first game in a while that he hasn't hit double digits.
Yep.
But again, he wasn't out there enough, really.
Right. Played 16 minutes. So actually quite a bit, but not offensively, didn't have many opportunities.
And he hit the one big 3. So his improved jump shooting continues. As I said, had 1 rebound, but it was an impactful one. In the second half. And, like I say, I mean, there are certainly things you can critique, and I'll guarantee Tom Izzo will, about the way he defended, but I did not think it was actually a terrible job of defense on his part. I just think at a certain stage of that game, Wilkerson had it going, and there wasn't anybody that was going to really put the clamps down on him, except, I will say, late in that game, Cohen Carr did maybe show, and I think it might have been, this would be my theory at least, without rewatching it to verify this. I think Cohen Carr being stronger played a role in a couple ways. One, in keeping Wilkerson from getting to the spots he wanted to inside the arc, where he really did a lot of damage against Jordan. It wasn't him busting Jordan for threes. It was getting the ball inside and hitting mid-range jumpers, or closer than that even. So I think Carr's strength helped there. And I also think it probably helped with Cohen maybe getting over the top of some of the screening action in a way that Jordan isn't quite yet able to do quite as effectively. So that was a good move late, though, because I do think that had something to do with quieting Wilkerson down over those last several minutes.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure Carr is the one who had the primary assignment of Wilkerson the first game. So it's interesting they didn't go back to that this game, but maybe they just had a little more confidence in Scott, and then things just sort of got weird with, minutes and stuff like that. So, well, of course, speaking of trouble with minutes, is Carson Cooper, who spent the entire game in foul trouble. He had 2 quick fouls, then he got his third foul picked up within 2 minutes or something the second half. Finished at 4 points, 1 for 3 from the field, 2 for 4 from the line, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 20 minutes. I mean, I kind of hard to believe he played 20 minutes. Didn't feel like it, but
well, one of those things where you have back-to-back career high games.
You're sort of due, right?
Offensively, and he just wasn't. The defensive, the fouls obviously was a problem because it limited his minutes, as we're talking about. And it hurt Michigan State because that meant that they didn't have the ideal guy they wanted out there to guard DeVries, right? And I think I'd have to go back to confirm it, but I anecdotally, I seem to recall DeVries did a lot of his damage when Carson was not on the floor.
And I mean, he certainly did most of it. I feel like later in the first half, and then early in the second half is kind of when he
it was the middle of the game that he really got going. But again, once Carson was able to play, well, that's not happening with as much regularity anymore, right? So, not obviously a forgettable night in a lot of ways for Carson, but I'm not worried about that. We know who he is at this point, and assuming that he gets a good shake from the stripes, I think he'll be fine in terms, going forward in terms of what MSU can expect from him. There's no reason to expect that we'll see much more of this. Just one of those days.
I think so. Cohen Carr finished with 6 points, 2 for 6 from the field, missed both his threes, was 2 for 3 from the line, 2 rebounds, just 1 of offensive, a couple turnovers, a block, played 36 minutes. So he played almost the entire game. I thought actually he played a pretty good game offensively. He just had, some struggles, I guess, but I never questioned his effort. I thought he was, I mean, he definitely more of the car who's sort of like impactful the whole game. I mean, because even when he wasn't, I just think he was better today, even though he didn't show up in the stat books with rebounds and such.
I'll say this. I think that what we just got done talking about, that he showed up defensively when Michigan State really needed him to. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
And for me, that overcomes maybe a lack of production that he had in this game. It wasn't a particularly productive game for Cohen. I mean, there's no arguing with that.
Right. Yeah.
But he did enough as a contributor on the defensive end in this one, I think, to be happy about the way he played, generally speaking.
And then we come to Kur Teng, who, because of Scott going out and played a ton of minutes, and boy, Michigan State certainly benefited from that as far as the shooting. 6 for 8 from the field from 3. All his shots were 3-pointers. Finished with 18 points, had a couple rebounds, 1 turnover, a block, a steal. Is that weird? No, wait a minute. I'm looking at someone else. That's Ward. Just 1 turnover, and played 29 minutes. He was, I think, probably not as good a defensive game as he had last game, but offensively, he was just lights out. I mean, he started to look like, well, I think wasn't Nick Sanders. People were asking how this team's gonna be different than next year, or who to keep track of, and he just said 2 words: Kur Teng.
Yeah,
I feel like this is the first game we've seen that the shooting, at least that we had anticipated to see, we really saw it on display today.
We've seen
him make shots, but this kind of performance, 6 for 8.
Well, it's a career high.
Yeah,
it's a career high in scoring. It's a career high in threes made in a game. Obviously, all of those things. So yeah, that's true, and it also represents consecutive strong shooting games for him,
right,
back to back. That's also important because I think we were talking about it, weren't we? I said, well, if you can get this Kur Teng, I said, well, that's the big if, right? Because he hadn't given any indication that you can expect that. But I liked, obviously offensively, I loved the game he had. He was confident. That's never been an issue, but that confidence is being rewarded now. Yep. Some real production. I really enjoyed that. Look, defensively, it was a struggle. I mean, he's just, you're right. It wasn't as good as the Purdue game. It wasn't an abject disaster, but as I mentioned, when they had to go through those minutes in the first half, where it was he and Trey out there together, you really saw it. I mean, it was just, you were just praying to survive it. That, oh God, please let them miss an open shot. And sometimes they did, but very, you'd hope for more on the defensive end, but if Michigan State can get that kind of offensive production out of Kur, that's a big plus. I'm not convinced we're there yet in terms of consistency. He's going to need to string a few more together before I feel comfortable saying that. But the thing is, and we've known this all along, we know that this kind of game is there. It's in him. So you go into any game believing that it's possible you might get that kind of production, right?
Right. Yeah, and Kur is I'm very impressed with him. I think it's going to be really good. It's very important going forward. And the one thing, the difference today, I think, maybe more so than the Purdue game, the change is the one thing I think he's not been as good at is I feel like, and I think Paul Konite mentions this too, he almost needs like a hand in his face or someone coming at him. And today he was hitting the wide open threes. He's just draining them. Right? And that was the one thing that I think he's
forward. Yes.
Right. He's got out of his head a little bit. He's just shooting now. And so that is, I mean,
but he truly is. He is a great contested shooter. That and what helps is his form, his release is very difficult to block.
Yeah, it's like behind his head or something. It's kind of like a weird.
So it's tough for a defender to truly limit him the way they would like to. But I agree. If you look on the season, I haven't seen anybody break it down. But his success rate on contested shots does anecdotally seem to be as good or better as the ones where he's wide open.
Yeah. The only ones that I think are like really the ones that he's made before that are sort of open are the ones off breaks, where he's like runs to the spot in the corner and hits those. But today he hit a bunch that were not always necessarily inside out ones, which he hit in Purdue, but ones that were just, they're kind of swinging around and not even really great. The one wasn't even a great pass. He still brought it up and then could take his shot. Because I feel like a lot of those spot up shooters, when you're there, you need to have it right in the pocket, when you shoot. And he's still, I tell you what, he's consistent. All right, so let's talk about Cam Ward. Only 4 points, 1 for 5 from the field. But he hit both his free throws. The first one looked really good. The second one bounced in, but it was online at least. 5 rebounds, 2 offensive. Had a turnover, a block, a steal. Played 17 minutes. I think we're starting to see a little bit of consistency. I think. I mean, I don't know how many games you need to string together to feel that way.
That's 2 straight good performances from him as well. It's not the loud counting stats, although 5 rebounds from him is pretty good. But you know it when you're seeing the Cam Ward that Michigan State needs. And they got, particularly on a day where Coop had to sit as long as he did. Again, did they miss Coop being out there? Yeah, because I think DeVries got some stuff that he might not have otherwise gotten done in the first half and early in the second. But I thought Cam stepped up and gave Michigan State largely what they needed given the foul trouble. And it's just, it's you want him being aggressive. You want him playing with strength, and he did those things today. So big positive.
And Trey Fort, 9 minutes, 0 for 2 from the field, had a couple 3 attempts, and that was about it. And defensively, it was sort of the way he's been.
Well and good. I will say this. He didn't get, I don't recall him getting just completely undressed defensively. In some ways, it was actually the one of his better recent defensive efforts because he actually held it together. But the problem is it also demonstrated the limitations that even when he's kind of giving you about as much as he can, it's still not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
So the other thing is offensively, obviously he does have talent. There's no denying that. Trey Fort has an ability to go get a shot. He has an ability to make a shot. We know that because we've seen it enough that we know it's in there. But I just don't ever feel like, and this is not entirely his fault because this tends to come with playing inconsistent, sporadic minutes, but it never feels like they are in the flow offensively when he's out there because his shots, like you're talking about Kur Teng, Kur Teng's shots, generally speaking, come within the rhythm, within the flow of the offense, right?
Yes.
They feel natural when he's taking them. It feels
totally
like the right shot. You don't get that with Trey.
Yeah.
And again, it's not all his fault, but you just don't. That's also a fact. So
it would be interesting to know what would happen if he had another season with Michigan State, but we'll never will. So that's the counterfactual.
Yep.
We'll never know. So the one guys you don't have to worry about, they're always going to come in. They're going to perform the way they should are the Brothers Jesu Gutters. If you are heading into spring now, you need to make sure your gutters are functioning properly. Those guys will make sure that if you have some problems like a leaky gutter, maybe it's full of leaves still that you never clean out in the fall, you don't want to get in the ladder because you're smart. You can have them get up in the ladder. They can take care of it. Put those leaf guards on so you can be like me and not have to worry about it anymore. It's really nice, let me tell you. I don't have to worry about my front door now. It no longer has, I don't have to restain it every year, which was really annoying. So water causes a lot of problems. So make sure it stays where it's supposed to be, which is not against your house or by your foundation. So contact the Brothers Jesu Gutters today. They will get you 10% off if you just mention Final Four when you get your estimate. And of course you can contact them and reach them at our support page at tffinots.com/support. Do it today, whether you're on the east or the west side of the state. They will take care of you. And they sponsor the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter. Who's Lamar Wilkerson? Well, let's see. Do they keep him in the gutter?
Before we get to that, we didn't talk about Denham Wojcik.
Oh yeah, Denham Wojcik, 1 assist, no minutes, or no points, no. I thought he was functional, but he only played 3, just a few minutes.
But it was a good turn.
Yeah,
it was a good turn. I didn't look at the plus minus. I think they won it, but
I would
part
think
of the
everybody's
reason they
plus
won
next
it
game.
is exactly what I've been saying. The concern when he's out there, unlike a lot of yahoos you're hearing talking about this on social media, is not the offensive end. And
Right.
what happened? They got to play because they can play, and they do play. Part of the reason they are doing that is they could play the same way they do normally with Jeremy out there. So what happened on the one possession they scored? Denham Wojcik penetrates, which he's able to consistently do.
Yep.
Kicks it out to a wide open Kur Teng who nails the three, one of those open threes.
Yep.
It was a great play, but it illustrates why they're doing it. With so many people hung up on the opposite, oh, you're playing 4-on-5. No, they actually are okay offensively. It's not where my worry is.
Yeah.
My worry is defense. But I think in this game, they happened to survive it, and I think they were a plus. I have to go back to confirm that, but I think they were. So hats off to Denham for making a great play.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you keep saying, it's not you'd rather not have Denham play but this is the hand you're dealt. You just go with it, and he's able to play pretty much the same way. And to all those people who always say, he's made the same argument with Jeremy Fears, like, well, if he can't shoot threes, he's, a worthless point guard. There are lots of people who can't shoot from outside, but can still be effective. It's not always 4-on-5. I just don't understand that sort of people saying that it gets clogged up or something. And that was against the zone, I believe, too. So it's not like, it's not like it's impossible to break down the zone if you can't shoot. Right. The only way to defeat is shooting through it. Well, I think Denham proved you force him to collapse and then you kick back out. That's the whole point, because they do have to honor his layup.
He consistently does that. If you pay attention, Denham Wojcik can penetrate. He can get into the lane. Now, what happens every time when he does it? Is he Jeremy Fears? No, he's not. But that's if you're trying to understand why they're not doing something like, well, let's go with Jordan Scott for 3 minutes, or let's go with Trey Ford. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why. Because they don't have to change the way they play. And contrary to the belief among some people out there, it is not an easy thing to change the way you play for 3 minutes of game time. And I would argue Michigan State does not have the personnel to do it anyway. They do not have, the classic example we're seeing this year in the league is Illinois on some occasions uses their power forward Merkovit as the backup quote unquote point guard.
Right.
Michigan State's done that in other years when they've had a 4-man that can handle it, and the court vision and the instincts and passing skill is there enough to justify doing it. We've seen that before.
Yep.
But they don't have that on this team.
Right.
So there's no, it's a set of bad answers. The least bad one, you can argue how big the margin is, but I believe the least bad one is the one that we're seeing. And again, the other thing is, for those who want to, bitch and moan about Izzo reflectively, how many minutes did Denham play today? Not many.
Not many. 3 minutes.
Played 3 minutes. So Fears actually played one more minute in this game than he did at Purdue, right?
Yeah.
He's doing what he can. He's doing what he realistically can to mitigate this, because he has a problem. But so what? That's the world. So you got to try to deal with it. And I believe he is playing this about as well as he can. But you just have to understand there is no silver bullet answer to this thing. And there are probably yet to be some games where it doesn't go as well as it did today, because that's the hand they're dealt. There's this human desire, this human belief that everything can be fixed if you just keep trying things. And it's not true.
Just ask any politician, right? All right. So player to keep the gutter for Michigan State, of course, was Lamar Wilkerson. I think it's fair to say that he was overflowing the gutters. 29 points, 11 for 21 from the field, 5 for 14 from 3, although I think a lot of his misses were the last little bit. 2 for 2 free throws. Just so I guess that was a win. 1 rebound, 1 assist, 2 turnovers, no steals, no blocks. I mean, he wasn't like a Wagler 46 points dropping against Purdue, but I mean, there was a stretch there in the second half. I think he just couldn't miss, and he just, whatever he did, he was, whoever they put on him, he'd score on. It was pretty impressive.
I thought he was heading for 40.
I thought so too.
And thank God they slowed him down just enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an impressive game. He's out, like I said toward the beginning of this. I said in the preview, he is one of the best pure offensive wings in the country, and nothing I saw today changed my mind about that. He is a very, very tough cover. He's got a quick release. He moves well without the ball, so he gets himself into good shooting situations. And yet he's also got the ability to get the ball to spots inside the arc he wants to operate in and convert them. I thought he was really good.
Yeah, so Lindquist DVM did ask, do you think Scott's foul trouble is why Wilkerson got going, got so much of his today, or was it just kind of a tough matchup? I think he just kind of got going.
There's an argument to be made that Wilkerson, because it is true, Wilkerson didn't do a lot early in this game.
Yeah, nobody
did start to pick it up. Well, DeVries was carrying them early, such as it was. Wilkerson didn't do much damage, and then when Jordan went out of the game, that's when, and MSU was in a tough spot defensively. Yeah. That's when he did start to get going. So there is a point there. That's not crazy. And with a great player, especially, sometimes that's all it takes. They see the ball go through the rim 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden they can't miss no matter who you put on them. And that's a little bit of what I was getting at is, yes, there are things you can critique about Jordan's defensive performance, but on balance, I didn't think it was terrible. I think he was just guarding a really skilled kid who had it rolling. And there wasn't much anybody was going to do to put that guy on ice at the time. Now, eventually, they did, as we talked about, they did find something of an answer when Cohen started to get some minutes against him later in the game. But I don't think it was I don't come away from this one feeling like Jordan had a really bad defensive night, because there have been some nights, like the Minnesota game, Jordan flat out struggled because he got worked physically. This was something else. This was a really good player, which, by the way, is a tough as hell assignment. You think about it. This is a true freshman. You're rolling out there against a guy who's scoring 21 a night. That's right from jump. That's an incredibly difficult assignment, right? And then on a night where he kind of has a period where he gets it going, that's tough for anybody. So I don't feel badly about Jordan's defense after this one. I just think it was one of those days.
Well, if you're like me and having one of those days, make sure you contact the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Those guys will clean your windows so you can see out clearly. You can get 15% off simply by mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate. You do that at our support page of the Final Four, soundtheschedule.com/support. They can take care of your windows, whether it's your home or business. They recommend twice a day. Troy and his team will come out. They do fantastic work. They can take care of the interior. They can do all the stuff you won't do, like the blinds, the screens. They'll get up on the ladders again, so you don't have to. Contact them today. They can also power wash your house too, which is now probably about time to start thinking about that sort of thing, because you got all the grime from winter. And they sponsor Who Cleans the Glass Best. And we've had all sorts of suggestions here from our listeners.
I've got one word for all of it. Moot.
Yeah. Well, no, here's the first suggestion. Here's the first suggestion is, Eric, you have some time to put some ventilation holes in that basketball head. The gutsy strategy didn't work this game. From one.
Yeah, let's start with that. I do want to acknowledge something.
What's that?
I do think it took a lot of guts and was a real swing for the fences kind of move to do what you did and take Coop first.
Yeah.
I do. I think you took a risk. And I think you did it because you kind of felt like there had been a pattern recently, but I would imagine some of the thought process is, well, I've got nothing to lose.
That was largely it.
Yeah, exactly. So I give you credit. I'm not going to shame you for making that decision. It didn't work out, but
Yeah. So Kohler, of course, finished with 13 rebounds, which was, he could have put about the entire Michigan State team against him, and he wouldn't have pulled it off. Coop with 3, Ward with 5, so ended up with 8, and Carr only had 1, right? 2.
Yeah, you won 2.
2.
You
So
had the you won the Ward Carr element. It's just
right.
You lost Kohler Cooper so badly that it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. Yeah. So hang on.
But minutes really, again, in fairness,
here it is for those
foul
watching
trouble.
on. There's the dreaded basketball head.
Foul trouble really put you behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, no question. So I was kind of doomed. So it's 15-11 with 2 to go. Obviously, it's over. I will say though, for those who listen to the audio, the basketball in my head is I might actually do some helium too, to be honest, because you should. It's only fair, I think, you to get something out of it, and it's kind of fun to play with helium, to be honest. So I've got to figure out how to do that, to be honest. So that'll be the other thing that I've got to try and figure out. So we'll give the fans what they want.
Did we do that? We didn't do this 3 years ago, right? We've only done this the last 2 years. Okay, yep, so that makes me 2-0. All right.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep track.
Yeah, right. I'm sure you just figured that out. Right?
Hey, listen, I gotta get it in now. I gotta really load up because I know
Do we have a contest?
We're about 7 days away from.
Is there some other contest? Maybe that's called like a beat Rod contest. Maybe we have to talk about.
Else. Yeah. So I need to get it in now.
Yeah, you better. All right. So we'll move on to something that's a little bit happier. Nudge printing. Nudge printing does fantastic work. I'm wearing my Nudge. I got to get this off so people can see my Nudge printing hoodie. This is super sweet. I love this one. This is my what I wear for the whiteouts, which I unfortunately got some spaghetti sauce on for dinner. But make sure you go ahead over to Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. Hit the TFFINOTS at the checkout. You get 20% off anything from your order. At nudgeprinting.com/win, and you can get access to all of our stuff. So if you want to get like a Tiff Knots hoodie or sticker or t-shirt, I mean, it's almost t-shirt weather right now, so it's a good time to go over to Nudge Printing. They, of course, have all the great stuff that is for Spartan apparel, and seasons are changing. It's time to start switching up your wardrobe. Get some stuff for you and your friends, your family, whoever. They'll love it. It's great stuff. You can wash it a million times. It still looks great. I mean, I don't know how many times I've washed this thing, but quite a few. So head over today. You'll be very glad you did. So yeah, someone's suggesting you should do helium. Well, we'll have to write more specific rules for next time so that we have it all set out. But I will say, actually, interesting thing, which I'll brief side note before we go to the keys of the game, is that so we go to the Big Ten tournament every year, and I will tell you, it drags on a little while. You do 2 this year, especially we're gonna have 2 games on Tuesday. We've got 4 Wednesday, 4 Thursday. Potentially, I mean, I think I will, which my family follows, so they'll play on Thursday probably. So we'll have at least one team to watch. So we decided we're going to do similar to this. We're going to take 2 players each game that we have to cheer for on just one of the teams, and so we'll have contest with all the 4 of us, the parents and the kids, and of course my son, who's an engineer, put together a program that automatically calculates all the points for you. So So at least give us something. We might be the only ones cheering in the great session on Tuesday, which I don't know if you've ever watched those on TV, but it's like kind of like it's sort of like watching a game at Penn State. So actually maybe Penn State is an advantage since it'll be just like a home game for them. All right. So first key to the game, physicality. I think we saw that in full display, especially the last 8 minutes or so of that game.
Yeah. As we talked about, and I guess we should call out though, because we don't have a separate key for rebounding in this one, I don't think.
Right. It's kind of there. I mean, I guess rebounding, I could just go
what did it end up? Michigan State
35-27. They had 10 offensive rebounds for 38% offensive rebounding rate when they got all that done pretty much the second half. 8 for Indiana for 24% rate. Second chance points, 12-8 edge for Michigan State.
That's pretty much on point with a standard issue MSU game this year. Ever so slightly below on the offensive end and about right on the defensive end.
Yeah.
And of course it was all amplified in the second half. The first half was actually not a particularly good performance, which was worrying because they were coming off a not particularly good performance against Purdue,
right.
A not particularly good performance against Ohio State.
Exactly.
So that second half was a welcome sight for sure. But I think it did show up. I think between the rebounding and what you talked about, just the evident exhaustion on the face of Indiana's players, I think you did see and also the way the game started. Let's not forget, did Indiana ever have a lead in this one?
They never led. No, it was
wire
tied
to
for
wire.
It was tied for 12 seconds. Something
Okay.
like that.
So essentially wire to wire.
Yep.
Michigan State's advantage in the post was huge in setting the tone early. All those people who have lamented slow starts, which they seem to be perpetually having for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you didn't get that today. And a big part of the reason you didn't get it was Michigan State was just way too much for Indiana physically inside. So I do think it showed up as a difference maker. And look, all you got to do is you got to just look at the way Indiana played. I keep saying this, Indiana and Iowa both, they're glorified mid-major teams. And that's descriptive. That's not pejorative. That's how they play. They don't have much in the way of internal fortitude in the paint, right? They're going to be a little bit short on the glass typically. They're going to struggle to defend in the paint. They don't have athletes on the perimeter, so they're going to give up penetration too. But they're going to shoot a lot of threes. They're going to play, generally a reasonably efficient brand of offensive basketball, and they're going to hope that that's enough. And on certain days, it might be. Like, my worry coming into this game, my biggest worry was MSU has the physical advantage. We all know that. But it is possible that Indiana could have just one of those days shooting the three, and it overcomes all those physical advantages. Yeah. Same way that team high majors get upset by mid majors, right? That's the equation. It's just funny seeing it in the Big Ten. You're not used to it because even typically in the Big Ten, like even if you think about a team like, Fran's Iowa teams, yeah, they were horrific defensively, but they generally rebounded well. They had, once he had a chance to settle into that program, they had real size.
Yep.
We're not used to seeing this. It's a different kind of thing for this league, the way that Iowa and Indiana are built. And it's going to be one of the most fascinating things in the conference this offseason is to see what adjustments, if any, those two coaches make to how they assemble their rosters. Because they're both going to have to make a lot of moves.
Yeah.
They're both losing a lot. So,
well, the Keys to Wisdom just posted there should never be a season when Indiana does not have good bigs. How does that happen? I think that's, probably true.
In fairness to DeVries, it can happen when you get hired and whenever he was hired, late March, early April, whatever it was. And you're essentially having to assemble an entire roster. So that's why I'm giving both of those guys a mulligan. If they do it again next year, then okay. Then we seem to be talking about intent. And that's something else. That will be a different conversation. But for this year, I'm just noting it because it's a fact. And frankly, in Indiana's case, it's put them in a situation where right now you would lean toward them not making the NCAA tournament, right?
Oh, they're definitely out.
They still got a big one. They still got a big one against Ohio State, which feels like it not necessarily is an elimination game, but it's certainly critical for those two teams.
It's certainly not elimination, probably for Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to be in, even if they lose that game.
It was a big win today for them.
Yeah,
big win.
It's at Indiana. I don't know that'll be enough for Indiana. They may need to get a win in the first round whenever they play in the Big Ten tournament.
But what I'm saying is that if Indiana were to lose it, it probably makes anything in the Big Ten tournament irrelevant.
Probably, yeah.
So their backs are firmly against the wall, and that's why. I mean, they're good enough in terms of their offensive skill elements,
right,
to be a tournament team. But Izzo said it in the post game. He's like, I do believe that's a tournament team. They just got to win some games. That's what he said. Well, state the obvious,
right?
But it's true. And the reason they haven't been able to win enough games, in my mind, is that they've got a roster that's just not ideal, to say the least, to try to compete with in a league like the Big Ten. you contrast what you saw out there today to, playing against the Michigans, the Illinois, even teams like Minnesota.
Yeah.
I give Nico Medved so much credit because he didn't get as much talent assembled as Iowa or Indiana did. But his team is almost as competitive. And in some ways, maybe in certain matchups, arguably more competitive than those teams, at least less vulnerable, because he at least got guys who were physically ready for the Big Ten.
Right. Yeah. That kind of bleeds into our second key to the game is guarding the arc. As far as a chance for Indiana to win that game. They finished 10 for 35 from three for 29%. I think, that they were mid 30s probably before they just kind of chucking everything with dead legs at the end of the game to try and get back in it. But still not a great performance from three. They definitely didn't start off well. And they were, I guess there were a couple like DeRisa that went really deep three. They didn't have a whole lot of like wide open threes. I mean, Wilkerson got going a little bit.
Well,
Enright had one, but he, airballed a couple too. So,
but I'll tell you the problem, and you're grading on a curve. So I'll lead with that. But there were several instances with threes that both DeVries and Wilkerson made where Michigan State was they were half beat slow. Couldn't get over the top of a pick cleanly enough.
Right.
There was one where they got tangled up with each other. It was Fears and somebody else, and that got Wilkerson loose for a three in the second half. I remember that one. But it was, yes, it's true. They weren't giving up a lot of just, wide open, but their defense was not where it needed to be. But that's part of the problem in playing Indiana is, at least with a couple of guys on that team, maybe you throw Dorn in there as a third, you got to be on point for 30 seconds. You really do, because if you are just a half beat late, you got a problem. Those guys will punish you. And that's why the efficiency numbers really surprised me after the game, because it felt like Indiana shot better than that. Because it just seemed like every time Michigan State made that half-second mistake, they got punished for it. That's just how it seemed watching it. Obviously, that was not entirely the case when you look at the numbers, but it felt that way watching it.
Well, I think you just kept wanting Michigan State to run this out to like 18, 20 points because it felt like they could. It's just like Indiana.
They were on the verge a few times.
They just kind of kept hitting enough to kind of get down to 8, and then it goes back to 12.
But that went both ways. It was remarkable in that way that Indiana would hit a shot to kind of maybe get it down to 8. Or even, they got it 6, once maybe. They got as close as 5, or they got it to 6 or 7. That happened. But seemingly every time it did, Michigan State had an answer, which was really good to see. Yeah. They were able to do that because God knows, we've been in some games where it's on the other end that's happening. You're trying to climb back into it, and you feel like you're one stop away. The Wisconsin game actually felt that way. There was at least in one stretch, there was a period where they got it in the second half.
Yeah.
They got it down to 9, and it felt like, man, we're one stop and a make away from putting game pressure on them. And every time that happened, Wisconsin just gave them the Heisman. They made a shot and just kept it. And that's what Michigan State largely did in this one. So that was impressive.
Right. And you could probably say they did the similar thing in Purdue. Now they never had a margin of double digits much. I mean, it was all close, but they always had an answer for every time Purdue did something in the second half. And so it was pretty much in that sense. And that's kind of really the second half was pretty much like that, right? It was an 8-point lead at halftime. They finished winning by 12, 13, 13 points. Yes. So it was pretty much about an 8 to 10 point margin, or to 12 most of the game and in the second half. And they just, it just kind of go back and forth. So, so someone mentioned you. It was 63% of the shots were from 3 for Indiana. So just kind of give an idea.
Okay, so on the season, they average, I think it's a tick over 51%.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it was 10th in the country coming in.
Yeah.
That's 11th, 63% is off the charts. But again, what is that reflective of? Well, one thing is certainly a stylistic choice, but 2, it's probably also a reflection of the fact that they understood it was going to be very difficult for them to do much inside the arc. They did we talked about there was a stretch where Alexis was able to get some things done in the post against Jax, but that was the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
In this game, they didn't get very much done on the blocks. Their guards other than Wilkerson, are not the type to really create much for themselves, and Michigan State wasn't letting them.
Yeah.
In terms of going off the dribble. So some of it certainly a stylistic choice by Indiana, but I think also just a reflection of some on-the-ground realities that, again, get back in part, not just to physicality, but physical tools, because it's also about athleticism as well. Yeah. It's not that Indiana is just smaller than Michigan State. They're also less athletic.
Third key of the game was the transition game, and Michigan State had a 7-2 edge in fast breaks. But I would say, I think that's right, but I think Jeremy is pushing a lot, and it forced Indiana to do a lot of sprinting, I think more than they wanted to do.
Yes.
And put a lot of game pressure on them. And you definitely saw that show up at the end, in the end of the second half.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was okay the way MSU pushed. You'd certainly like a little more production than that, but I guess I'm not totally surprised. I think Indiana, to some extent, prioritized it.
Yeah, and there weren't those long rebounds in the first half were going to Indiana kind of initially, and so those were opportunities to run. They didn't have them.
Yep.
So fourth key of the game, we already talked about this to some extent, is Jax, and Rod accurately thought he needed to get back on track. Well, he did.
Yeah, huge game, as we talked about. I'm very glad to have, been somewhat prophetic in that. But honestly, it was a matter of time. He's too good a player to just continue to struggle in terms of his efficiency. And this was inevitable. Somebody was going to get tagged like this. Now, for him and for Michigan State, the key is that this gets him back on a roll as we go forward. And we see him string together, 3, 4, 5, hopefully more than that, because that means they're going deep into March together, right?
Yeah. And the fifth key of the game is our offensive aggression. Interesting. Michigan State 50% from 3, 12 for 24, and then a little bit under 50% from 2. So actually not very great. 2% for as good as they were against Purdue. And I guess I should check. I bet the first half Michigan State's 2-point shooting was amazing. In the second half, they kind of looked tired too. I mean, as far as 2-point shots, it didn't matter as much. But
I think it was
Indiana couldn't either.
I think it was a couple different things. One of them was that Michigan State was shooting so effectively from deep that they took those shots and made a lot of them. So that was part of it. I think Indiana was able to utilize their zone to limit Michigan State, because we saw what the start of the game looked like.
Right.
The first 3 minutes, I was thinking, boy, did I nail this one. Because it looked like Michigan State was going to roll up 60 points in the paint, right? But it stopped. And it stopped because, as I say, a few different reasons. One thing that hurt is that we talked about this. Fierce could have had 3 more assists, no question.
Yeah.
And he didn't get them because MSU was really inefficient directly at the rim. They had 3 lobs that should have gone down that didn't.
Yeah.
So that hurt their conversion rate. But yeah, the other thing was they ended up shooting, it was an okay performance.
48. It's interesting. They were 7 for 11 in the first half from 2 for 64%.
Yeah.
The second half was obviously not good.
Right.
To bring it all the way down to like 48% or something from 2. So
yeah. They took 19 free throws. Indiana didn't, we talked about it as a serious weakness of Indiana's team, and it is on the season. Inability to defend without fouling. Well, they only had 17 fouls in this game. And a little bit of that came late when they were trying to string the game out and hang around, right? For a long stretch in the second half, Neither team was fouling. But it was, I was surprised by that. But again, then you go back to the way Michigan State was playing, and they really weren't putting Indiana under the kind of pressure I anticipated they would defensively to force fouls.
Right.
So it was a little bit surprising to me. But I feel better about this one in a lot of ways than I did about the UCLA blowout, because the 3-point shooting was similar in the two games, but I don't feel there were as many warts that got covered up in this one.
It just looked like the first half, maybe,
UCLA.
but they cleaned them up in the second half as far as, hitting the boards, because that's the thing they didn't do against UCLA. So,
right.
All right. So then we have Fanduel Michigan State Player of the Game. So I know this. We had a couple candidates. I mean, I guess you've got Teng, you've got Cooper, you've got Fears, or not Cooper, Kohler and Fears. So who do you have as a Player of the Game? And I'll tell you who the fans picked here in a second.
It's really tough, because you could pretty steadily, you can say Jeremy Fears is a worthy winner any night. And absolutely the case in this game. He would be. But, Kur Teng coming in with a career high and just hitting big shot after big shot, that was significant. But I have to give it to Jax. Got back in the double-double column for the first time in quite a while. And, 21 and 13, and it was an efficient 21. Yeah. Sticking threes, so it was 3 for 5 from 3, I think.
Yep.
You got to give it to Jax.
Well, we have a tie between Fears and Teng, and then
seriously,
yeah.
Well, look, I mentioned them because Jeremy, I have no beef with.
Yeah.
Or Teng, the shooting was huge, but defensively, not a great night.
Well, I will say this about Teng, as far as if this is a kind of shooting that propels him into this kind of level of shooting and going forward through the postseason, it could be a very, very, very important game for him. Like if this is the thing that gets him going. And so, yeah.
No question. I'm not
no, I know you're not
denying the importance. Look, and here's another thing that's true. In this game, the defensive issues being what they were, was Kur Teng a positive for Michigan State out there? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. You're going to have to get shooting in order for that to be true. And we haven't yet seen enough that would make you feel comfortable to assume that you're going to get it. I also think in a game like this, honestly, for as important as his shooting was, and it was, Jaxon Kohler had 13 rebounds. Jeremy Fears closed the game when nobody else could score, ends up with 21 and 9. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You're talking player of the game. You're not talking most surprising player of the game. It's player of the game.
Well, head on over to FanDuel. Make sure, and you can participate in our FanDuel Play of the Game for next game, which is the Rutgers game, of course. You can find all the odds you want and all the sports you like to watch, whether it's the Pistons, Red Wings. I think I heard Rod listen to I think you were listening to the Red Wings game or watching the Red Wings game or something, or I heard some sort of hockey game going before he came on.
It's the Pistons.
Okay. I thought I heard some ice. Did you see the shootout from Michigan State, their hockey game last night?
I heard about it. I didn't see
Holy cow, 13 rounds.
13, yeah.
So they get the extra point against Ohio State.
Now they're knocking on the door with third straight Big Ten title. That's great.
Yeah, kind of crazy. So before we wrap up, of course, we remind everyone to head over to our sport page. You can find a way to support the show. You can, of course, check out all our sponsors. There's an interesting point. So this is my family enjoy this. So Rod's Couch from Lundquist DVM, Rod's Couch Talk in the IU preview is very accurate. That it's harder to enjoy the success this year with how well that team down the road is doing this year. Ha ha. It shouldn't be. But I think to your point, it's absolutely for sure what's going on.
I was saying that as both a diagnosis of a problem and a critique.
Yes.
That it shouldn't affect the idea that it's affecting anybody's view of this Michigan State team, given the year they're having, is crazy to me.
Well,
I
and
hate I hate that bunch as much as anybody. But come on.
Well, I will say this though. Michigan State started out really hot. They looked really good. Michigan went on that heater. Michigan State was still playing really well. And then February hit and, the Illinois game had happened. And then just kind of like just the doldrums, just the team that just kind of looked not dysfunctional, but just not really sharp. Right. And then they finally just have now gotten into it. And I think that sort of contributed to it. Michigan was kind of rolling. And if it wasn't Michigan, obviously people would not be bothered by it. So that is no question. This team is 14-4. They've only lost 5 times all season. This is a 25-5 team. I mean,
right.
Only because Michigan's having an historic season is Michigan State not like easily in first place in the Big Ten, right? I mean, this is kind of a weird year.
But my point was, it was negativity, not even just about this year, but also about next year somehow. Coming off a win in West Lafayette, that's what got me going. If people want to get upset after Michigan State struggles to beat Ohio State, I'm sympathetic.
Right.
Now, you could honestly, and I think we expressed that, say, hey, can't play this way if you think you're going to do damage in March. Got to be better. Totally fair. But they just won for the first time in 12 years at Purdue. So at that point, you're suffering from Michigan derangement syndrome. Right. You are. And that's shameful. That should never happen. Look, I'd have to go back, count it up. But the number of years since Izzo's third year, the first time he got to the NCAA tournament, that Michigan has finished ahead of Michigan State in the Big Ten standings, I think, I don't come at me if I've got this wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the 5th time in 28 tries that's happened. Think about that. And when you're thinking about it, realize how ridiculous it is. And by the way, best as I could tell, Michigan hadn't won. They won a Big Ten title. They haven't won jack shit nationally yet. And they're not. And anybody acting like this is going to be a coronation ceremony for them is out of their mind. So I just don't. And frankly, I'm gonna say one more thing, and we'll see what happens. In no world would I be shocked to see this Michigan State team go further in the NCAA tournament than Michigan does.
It's possible for sure.
If they don't do it, come at me. But again, I'm not guaranteeing it. I'm just saying there's no reason in the world, none, to think about that prospect as anything close to an impossibility.
This is a good Michigan State team.
It's like, how can you be a sad sack about this Michigan State team? They're going to be minimum, I think now, assuming they do what they're supposed to do against Rutgers. I have a hard time seeing them moving lower than the 3 line. And it still kind of feels like the 2 might be in play. I don't think that's an important difference, because if you're a 2 or 3, you're playing the same teams in a Sweet 16 game, right?
Yeah.
Assuming chalk holds.
Exactly.
It's just whether you're wearing the white jersey or the colored jersey, But but I guess it's an accomplishment, a minor one, but it's something. But that's what this team is. So, Jesus Christ, the fact that Michigan's good too, you can't let that ruin your day when Michigan State, the thing you're supposed to be focused on and care about, is having a great year again.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if you feel, but I feel like this team's better and better equipped to have a deeper run in the tournament than last year's team. Maybe now without Divine. I guess without Divine, maybe I don't know. I still kind of feel like
here would be the argument, and I mean we're going to get into this more as we move through the next couple of weeks.
Right.
But right now, what I would be inclined to say is this: I think it is offensively a more versatile team because it has proven to be a better deep shooting team.
Yes,
for whatever that matters for a team that doesn't take a ton of them. But you see it in a game like today, right?
Right. You win comfortably.
Last year's team, you knew, and you could make an argument that had they shot the 3 better, they would have had a chance to hang in there with Auburn. Yeah, they just didn't. They didn't do that. They shot miserably, other than Kohler, and that meant they had no chance in that game. I don't know that this team faces that, but I think that it's a little more well-rounded offensively. I think the fact, for as good as the point guard play was last year, and it was, the fact that this team has a certified ass kicker as its point guard is a big deal.
Yep.
When your best player is your point guard in March, big deal. I think this team has been slightly better as a rebounding team, slightly better as a defensive team.
Mm-hmm.
One problem it's got, one negative, would be it doesn't have the same amount of depth that last year's team had. I don't know what Bill Rafferty was talking about on that, bro. I think he got fed a line by Izzo that, oh, yeah, our bench is really coming along. Like, what?
I was trying to figure
problem now. But that's the big negative, though.
Yeah.
That, and we've seen glimpses of it recently. We saw glimpses of it today. This team is much more vulnerable than last year's was to, say, a foul trouble issue.
Right.
You get the wrong guy. You get Fears or you get Scott or even Carr in foul trouble early in a game. That could be a major problem. Whereas last year's team, you just never felt that way.
Yeah.
Pretty much anybody other than maybe Jace could get in early foul trouble. And you felt like, okay, you're plugging in a guy who's basically about the same. That's not the case this year. So that would be the negative case for this team versus last year's. But I think there are definitely reasons to think this team is a little more complete, a little better equipped. But at the same time, I think it's also more vulnerable.
Yeah, no, it's totally reasonable because last year they had sort of the junk drawer. You know, he could go in, find someone on the bench who's going to fix whatever the problem is that during that game. Doesn't have that as much this year, but I think his starting five and, the first couple guys on the bench are better just overall as far as the play, like level play. But you're right, bench is not as deep.
And I think this, we spent all last year talking about the wonders of the strength in numbers thing, Michigan State's depth. And it was hugely important. It was.
Yeah.
Because it preserved them in terms of energy. Nobody was burned out at the end of the season, right?
Yep.
But the other thing it did was, again, if somebody got in foul trouble or somebody was having an off day, you had another legitimate answer you could go to. That's not the case with this team. It's why, to bring it back around to Michigan for a second, and I'm sure many of our listeners are aware that their backup point guard, LJ Kaysen, is done for the year. And in fact, that's the kind of injury that, you gotta wait to see more information about the severity of it. But that an ACL, he could be done for next year too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think
that's entirely
it's part
possible.
of the year. Yeah, I think it's likely.
A complete tear, he could be done. But for this year's team, for them, it's not a problem in terms of what it's going to mean for them in terms of wear and tear or anything, because one, they're almost done with the regular season.
Right.
And they've still got enough bodies that it's not an issue. But where it is an issue for them is they've got a point guard in Cadeau who is, to be kind, mercurial, let's say. He's capable of having great games. He's also capable of being an absolute pile of what.
Yeah.
And if they run into one of those games in the tournament, what's been helping them greatly the last month is that Kaysen has all of a sudden become a dead-eye shooter. He's shooting over 40%. He still had trouble occasionally with turnovers, but it was a situation just like we're describing with Michigan State where somebody's in foul trouble or somebody is just off. We got another card we can play.
Yep.
And they don't have that now. So now they're in a situation not too dissimilar in some basic ways with the one Michigan State's dealing with Ugachukwu, because they don't really have the obvious answer anymore. What they're probably going to do is either have Trey McKinney play more point guard, which I don't think is a good idea. He's looked terrible in that role. He's had a great freshman year, but he's not a point guard.
Yeah,
I've never seen an indication from him in high school, whenever, that he was a point guard. Or I think the more likely thing is they start trying to play a little bit more like they did with Wolf last year and run half-court offense through Jaxon. They can do that because they have that kid who's got that skill set. Yep. That's something Michigan State does not have on its roster, and it's why you're seeing Denham Wojcik. But you see what I'm saying? Michigan's got to do some things differently now to try and make up for that. And that's the real impact of the loss to their depth at that position, It's just that they don't have that additional card to play. Well, Michigan State's got that problem.
Right.
Michigan State, and when they have to go to other answers, you see some pretty stark vulnerabilities. I'm telling you, I'm going to be holding my breath if they're even a first round tournament game and they got to play 8 minutes with a combination of Kur Teng and Trey Ford on the floor together.
Yeah.
I'm going to be terrified, so just pray for reluctant whistles.
Yeah. Well, I think, hopefully it's a good lesson for Scott that he's a little bit more careful and recognizes, when to make the play and not. But
it's hard. It's hard because what makes that kid who he is that he's so disruptive. He's trying to make plays all the time. You can't, and I didn't think either of his fouls were particularly reckless.
No,
they were just fouls, they just happen.
Right.
But that's the last thing you want to do is tell Jordan Scott, hey, rein it in. Because the way he's contributing in large part is down to how much he tries to make happen. And he's a smart player. So usually he's not being reckless when he does that.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about obviously the team and going forward for the Rutgers preview in a couple days, as Michigan State has a few days off to rest before senior night. Be kind of interesting to see who they start in that game. And also that this is so 3 games in a row that they're all double plays for Michigan State. So the first is Indiana and Celeste. We have the best vocabulary, she said. Best.
What's that?
Oh, Celeste, 1765 said, Tipnot's the only basketball podcast with a robust vocabulary. Oh, so, that's what you have when you have an
nice
attorney.
Use of robust. Yeah. That's a favorite of mine too.
Yeah. Totality, granularity, all those things. Yeah. We got them all. So we'll be back again in a couple of days with the Rutgers preview. We'll probably have a new contest from Gabe as far, I think. Well, I'm trying to get a hold of him and see who won that got the drawing for the free quarter zip. So head on over once again to check out our support page at the Final Four on schedule.com/support. Appreciate you listening. Continue to subscribe, hype, share this with your friends, tell others about the show. We really appreciate it. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.